The small human shuttle moved slowly toward the orbital station. Inside, Doyen pressed his face close to the viewport, watching the strange structure grow larger. He had seen many alien stations before, but this one was different. The Velthari built everything in curves and spirals like shells from an ocean floor. Doyen smiled. He loved first contact missions. Each new species taught him something about the universe and about humanity too. Behind him, Hyeri checked her equipment one more time. She was always careful, always worried about making mistakes. That was why they worked well together. Through the viewport, Doyen saw a figure moving in the docking bay. A Velthari worker was preparing the connection port. The alien had smooth blue-green skin that seemed to shimmer under the station lights. Their body was humanoid but adapted for water, with webbed hands and feet. When the worker looked up toward the approaching shuttle, their large eyes caught the light. Doyen did something he had done 1,000 times before, something so natural he did not even think about it. He raised his hand and waved. On the other side of the viewport, Tyri froze. She had been working at the orbital station for 3 years, and she had never seen anything like that gesture. The human's hand moved back and forth in the air, fingers spread wide. It was casual. It was friendly. It was completely outside every protocol she had ever learned. In Velthari culture, every movement had meaning. Every gesture was part of a formal system that took years to master. You did not just move your hands randomly. You did not acknowledge someone without following the proper ritual. But this human had done exactly that, and somehow it felt warm, welcoming. She did not understand it, but she could not look away. The shuttle docked with a soft thud. Terry shook herself and returned to her duties. She had work to do. The airlock cycled and the human delegation emerged. Station Commander Jinsu waited in the reception area, his posture perfect and formal. He was old for a Velthari, with skin that had faded to a pale green. He believed deeply in tradition and doing things the right way. When the humans approached, he began the formal welcome ritual. Jinsu raised both arms to shoulder height, palms facing down. He held the position for exactly 3 seconds, then lowered his arms to his sides. Then he raised his right arm forward, palm up, and held it for 3 more seconds. The ritual had 7 positions in total, each one precise and meaningful. Doyen watched carefully and tried to copy the movements. He raised his arms, but not quite at the right angle. He held them for maybe 2 seconds, not 3. When he reached the 3rd position, he wobbled slightly and had to catch his balance. Then Doyen laughed. It was a warm, embarrassed sound. He smiled at Jinsu and raised his hand in that same gesture from before, fingers moving back and forth. "Sorry," he said through his translator device. "We'll get it right eventually. Nice to meet you." Jinsu's skin patterns flickered with colors that meant displeasure and confusion. This human was mocking their ritual, or perhaps humans were simply too primitive to understand proper behavior. Either way, it was not a good start. The formal meeting that followed was stiff and uncomfortable. Jinsu and the other Velthari officials sat perfectly still in their chairs, speaking only when protocol demanded it. The humans tried to be friendly, but every attempt at casual conversation was met with formal responses. By the end of the meeting, both sides were relieved it was over. During a break, Terry found herself standing near the human called Hyeri. The human was looking at a data pad, but she glanced up and smiled. Terry had learned that smiles were a human expression of friendliness, though it still looked strange to see someone bare their teeth that way. Terry thought about the gesture she had seen earlier. She needed to know. "Your companion," she said, using the formal speech patterns she had been taught. "When you arrived," he moved his hand in the air. "What was the meaning of this action?" Hyeri blinked, then her smile grew wider. "Oh, you mean Doyen?" He was waving. "It's just a greeting. We do it all the time, especially when we see someone through a window or from far away. It's like saying hello, but simpler." "A greeting," Terry repeated slowly. "But it has no formal structure, no required duration, no specific meaning beyond acknowledgement." "Exactly," Hyeri said. "That's what makes it nice. You just wave when you see someone. It tells them you notice them. You acknowledge they exist. Sometimes it means hello, sometimes goodbye, sometimes just, hey, I see you there. It's friendly." Terry felt something shift in her understanding. In Velthari culture, you either performed the full formal greeting, which took time and attention, or you said nothing at all. There was no middle ground. But this wave was something in between. A way to acknowledge another person without all the ceremony. A way to be friendly without the burden of ritual. She thought about this for the rest of the day. The idea would not leave her mind. That evening, the humans prepared to leave. The diplomatic mission had not gone well, and everyone knew it. The Velthari thought the humans were disrespectful. The humans thought the Velthari were cold and distant. Both sides were disappointed. Doyen stood at the viewport one last time as the shuttle prepared for departure. He looked out at the docking bay and saw Terry at her station. She was watching the shuttle, her large eyes reflecting the station lights. Doyen raised his hand and waved goodbye. He did not expect anything in return. He just did it because it felt right, because it was what humans did. Terry stared at the gesture. She remembered what Hieri had said. It was simple. It was friendly. It was a way to say, I see you. Slowly, carefully, Terry raised her own hand. Her webbed fingers spread slightly. She moved her hand back and forth, copying the motion she had seen. She waved back. Through the viewport, Doyen's face lit up with joy. His smile was so big and genuine that even across the distance, Terry could see his happiness. He waved again, more enthusiastically this time, his whole arm moving. Terry felt her skin patterns shift to colors of pleasure and curiosity. She waved again too, and this time it felt natural. Easy. It was just a hand moving in the air, but it meant something. It created a connection between two very different beings. From the command center, Jinsu watched this exchange through the security monitors. His skin darkened with disapproval. That young dock worker was engaging in barbaric gestures with the aliens. She was abandoning protocol for meaningless hand-waving. This was exactly the kind of behavior that would corrupt their culture. He made a note to speak with Tyri about proper conduct. This wave nonsense had to stop before it spread. The Velthari had thousands of years of tradition, and they would not throw it away because some friendly aliens moved their hands around. But as the human shuttle pulled away from the station, Terry stood at her viewport and waved one more time. And even though no one waved back now, even though the shuttle was already turning toward open space, she felt something new. She felt connected. She felt acknowledged. She felt for the first time in her life that she could express friendliness without following a script. The wave was simple. It was easy, and Terry knew deep in her heart that she would do it again. 3 months had passed since the humans visited, and Terry could not stop thinking about the wave. She practiced it in her quarters when no one was watching. Hand up, fingers spread, motion back and forth. It was such a simple thing, but it made her feel something she had never felt before. Free. Every day, ships came and went from the orbital station. Cargo vessels, research ships, passenger transports. Terry guided them all to their docking ports, following the same procedures she had followed for years. But now when she saw a ship approaching through her viewport, she sometimes raised her hand and waved. Just for herself. Just to feel that connection, even if no one saw it. Jiwoo noticed it first. She was younger than Terry, with bright green skin patterns that showed her constant curiosity. She worked at the station next to Terry's, and one morning she caught Terry waving at an incoming cargo ship. "What are you doing?" Jiwoo asked, swimming over through the water-filled corridor that connected their stations. Terry felt her skin flush with embarrassment colors. "Nothing. Just a gesture." "What kind of gesture? I've never seen it in any protocol manual." Terry hesitated, then decided to explain. She told Jiwoo about the humans, about their simple greeting, about how it felt to acknowledge someone without all the ceremony. Jiwoo listened with growing fascination, her skin patterns shifting to bright colors of interest. "Show me," Jiwoo said. Tyri demonstrated the wave. Jiwoo tried it herself, her webbed hand moving awkwardly at first, then more smoothly. She laughed, which made bubbles rise in the water around them. "It feels strange but nice, like saying hello without the work of hello." "Exactly," Terry said. The next day, when a cargo vessel approached, Jiwoo waved at it through her viewport. She did not expect anything to happen. It was just a hand motion after all. But inside the cargo vessel, pilot Bora saw the gesture. Bora had been flying cargo runs for 15 years. She was practical and efficient, with no patience for unnecessary ritual. She found the formal docking procedures exhausting. Announce your vessel. State your purpose. Perform the greeting ritual. Wait for permission. It took so much time when all she wanted was to unload her cargo and move on to the next job. But this gesture the young dock worker made was different. It was quick. It was simple. And somehow it made Bora feel acknowledged in a way the formal procedures never did. Someone had seen her. Someone had said hello in the easiest way possible. When Bora docked and exited her ship, she found Jiwoo and asked about the gesture. Jiwoo explained eagerly, and Bora immediately understood the appeal. A way to acknowledge other pilots without the burden of ceremony? That would change everything. Bora started waving at station operators every time she approached or left a dock. Other pilots noticed and asked her about it. She told them, and they started waving too. Within a few weeks, the wave was spreading through the pilot community like ripples in water. It was especially popular among the younger workers, those who had grown up in the expanding space program and found the old formalities tiring. They waved at each other across viewports. They waved at passing ships. They waved when they were happy, when they were tired, when they just wanted to connect with another person without following a script. The wave became more than just a copied human gesture. The Velthari began adding their own touches to it. Some accompanied the wave with bioluminescent patterns on their skin that showed different emotions. A wave with blue patterns meant a formal acknowledgement. A wave with green patterns meant friendship. A wave with yellow patterns meant gratitude. They were making it their own, but not everyone approved. Commander Jinsu watched the growing trend with increasing alarm. Every day, more workers abandoned proper protocol for this casual hand-waving. Ships were greeting each other with waves instead of formal communications. Pilots were waving at station operators instead of performing the proper rituals. It was chaos. Jinsu called a meeting with all station personnel. He stood before them, his posture rigid and formal, his skin patterns showing stern authority colors. "I have observed a disturbing trend," he said. "Many of you have begun using an informal gesture learned from the human visitors. This wave, as they call it, is not part of our protocols. It is not part of our culture. It represents a degradation of the standards that have served our people for thousands of years." He paused, looking at each worker in turn. "Effective immediately, this gesture is forbidden. Any personnel caught using it will face disciplinary action. We are Velthari. We have our own ways. We do not need to copy the behaviors of other species." The room was silent. Terry felt her skin pale with anxiety. Jiwoo's patterns flickered with worry. But Bora, standing at the back of the room, felt anger rising inside her. Who was Jinsu to tell them they could not express friendliness in a simple way? What harm did a wave cause? After the meeting, the workers returned to their duties. But Jinsu's order did not have the effect he wanted. Instead of stopping the wave, he had made it into something more. It became a quiet rebellion, a small act of resistance against traditions that no longer made sense to the younger generation. Pilots waved from their cockpits where station cameras could not see them. Workers waved to each other in corridors when supervisors were not watching. The gesture went underground, but it did not disappear. If anything, forbidding it made people want to use it more. On the Velthari Council, a young member named Minho heard reports about the situation at the orbital station. He was curious about this wave phenomenon. It seemed like such a small thing, but it was causing significant conflict. Why did the young workers care so much about a simple gesture? Minho decided to visit the station himself to observe. He arrived during a busy traffic period when dozens of ships were coming and going. He stationed himself where he could watch the docking bays without being noticed. What he saw surprised him. Despite Jinsu's order, workers were still waving. A cargo ship approached, and the pilot waved at the station through her cockpit window. A young dock worker saw it and waved back, his face breaking into a smile, his skin patterns glowing with happy colors. The exchange took maybe 2 seconds, but the joy it created was obvious. Minho watched this happen again and again. Each time, the workers showed genuine pleasure. They were not being disrespectful or chaotic. They were simply connecting with each other in a way that felt natural and good. In one observation period, Minho saw more genuine happiness than he had seen in years of formal council meetings. The wave was making people happy. Could that really be a bad thing? That evening, Minho sat in his quarters and thought about what he had witnessed. The Velthari had always prided themselves on their formal culture, their precise protocols, their dignified behavior. But somewhere along the way, had they forgotten how to simply be friendly? Had they made connections so complicated that people were afraid to reach out to each other? The wave was spreading because it filled a need. People wanted to acknowledge each other without ceremony. They wanted to be friendly without following complicated rules. They wanted something simple and warm and human. That last thought made Minho pause. Human. The gesture came from humans, but the Velthari were making it their own. They were not abandoning their culture. They were evolving it. Minho decided he would speak to the council. Not everyone would agree with him, but he had to try. The wave was here to stay, whether the traditionalists liked it or not. The question was whether the council would fight against their own people or accept that change was natural and necessary. As he prepared for sleep, Minho looked out his window at the orbital station in the distance. Ships moved through the space around it, tiny points of light against the darkness. And though he could not see it from this distance, he knew that inside those ships and on that station, Velthari were waving at each other. A simple gesture. A human gift, and now something uniquely Velthari. 6 months after the humans first visited, the wave had become a crisis in Velthari society. The council chambers were filled with heated debate. High Counselor Una stood at the center, her elegant form rigid with conviction, her skin patterns displaying the deep purple of authority and concern. "This is not about a simple gesture," Una said, her voice clear and strong. "This is about who we are as a people. For thousands of years our protocols have defined us. They have given us structure, dignity, and purpose. And now, because of one encounter with aliens, our youth are abandoning these traditions for casual hand-waving." Around the chamber, several council members nodded in agreement, but others looked uncertain. Minho sat quietly, waiting for his moment to speak. "We must take stronger action," Una continued. "Commander Jinsu's prohibition was not enough. We need penalties, real consequences for those who continue to use this wave. We need mandatory re-education programs to remind our people of proper behavior. We need to protect our culture before it is too late." "Or," Minho said, rising to his feet, "we could ask ourselves why our people want to use this gesture so badly. What need does it fill that our traditional protocols do not?" Una turned to face him, her skin patterns shifting to challenging orange. "The need for laziness? The need to avoid proper respect? The need for connection," Minho replied calmly. "I have visited the orbital station. I have watched our workers and pilots use this wave. And do you know what I saw? Joy, genuine happiness, people connecting with each other in a way that feels natural and good. When did we lose that?" Before Una could respond, the chamber doors opened. An elderly Velthari entered, moving slowly but with unmistakable dignity. It was Kira, the historian who had retired from the council years ago. She was rarely seen in public anymore, but everyone respected her deep knowledge of Velthari history. "Counselor Kira," Una said, surprise coloring her voice. "We did not expect you." "I heard about this debate," Kira said, her old voice still strong, "and I felt I needed to speak. May I address the council?" Una gestured for her to proceed. Kira moved to the center of the chamber, looking at each council member in turn. "You speak of protecting our traditions," Kira began, "of maintaining the protocols that have defined us for thousands of years. But do you know how those protocols came to be? Do you know what our greeting rituals looked like 3,000 years ago? 5,000 years ago?" The chamber was silent. Kira continued. "They were completely different. Our ancestors used different gestures, different timings, different meanings. The formal 7-position greeting that we consider sacred and ancient, it was created only 2,000 years ago, replacing an earlier 4-position greeting that was itself a replacement for something even older. Our culture has always changed, always evolved. The only constant is that each generation believes their version is the eternal truth." Una's skin patterns flickered with uncertainty. "But those changes happened slowly over centuries. This wave has spread in months, because it fills a need," Kira said, "because our current protocols have become so complex and time-consuming that they prevent the very connection they were meant to create. The wave is not destroying our culture. It is expressing something that was always part of us, but had no outlet." Outside the council chambers, the conflict was playing out in a different way. A young pilot named Seojin had become the public face of what people were calling the wave movement. He was charismatic and passionate, with bright skin patterns that drew attention wherever he went. Seojin organized a gathering in the main plaza of the orbital station. He sent messages to every worker, every pilot, everyone who believed that the wave was worth defending. Hundreds of young Velthari showed up, filling the plaza with their presence. When a ship approached the station, Seojun raised his hand and waved. The entire crowd waved with him. When the ship departed, they waved again. Ship after ship, wave after wave. It was peaceful. It was silent. But it was powerful. The message was clear. We are here, we are many, and we will not stop waving. Security cameras captured the entire demonstration. The footage was shown to the council. Yuna watched it with a mixture of frustration and confusion. These young people were not being violent or destructive. They were just waving. But their defiance of council authority was absolute, you see? Yuna said to the other council members. This is what the wave has created: division, conflict, young people who think they know better than their elders. But Minho saw something different in the footage. He saw genuine emotion. He saw people standing together for something they believed in. And most importantly, he saw something he had not seen in formal Velthari gatherings in years. He saw happiness. One particular moment in the footage caught everyone's attention. A cargo ship passed close to the station and the pilot waved from her cockpit. A young dock worker in the plaza waved back, his face breaking into a huge smile, his entire body glowing with bright yellow patterns of joy. The connection between them was visible, tangible, real. The council chamber fell silent as they watched this moment. Even the most traditional members could not deny what they were seeing. These young people were not being disrespectful. They were not mocking tradition. They were expressing something genuine and beautiful. After a long pause, Kira spoke again. I have studied cultures across the galaxy. I have seen civilizations rise and fall. And I can tell you this. Cultures that refuse to change do not survive. They become fossils, beautiful but dead. Living cultures adapt, they grow. They take in new ideas and make them their own. She looked directly at Yuna. The wave is not a human gesture anymore. Watch the footage closely. See how our people wave? They do it differently than humans do. They add bioluminescent patterns. They vary the speed and arc of the motion to convey different meanings. They have taken something foreign and made it Velthari. That is not cultural destruction. That is cultural evolution. Yuna watched the footage again. Kira was right. The Velthari wave was not identical to the human wave. It had been adapted, modified, made unique to their species. They had not simply copied the humans. They had created something new. For the first time, doubt crept into Yuna's conviction. She had been so focused on preserving the past that she had not noticed her people creating something meaningful for the future. The debate in the council continued for hours. Some members argued for harsh penalties. Others argued for acceptance. Minho spoke about what he had witnessed at the station, about the genuine connection the wave created. Kira provided historical context, showing how Velthari culture had always changed and adapted. Finally, as the day grew late, Yuna raised her hand for silence. Everyone turned to her, waiting. I have been thinking, she said slowly, about what it means to preserve culture. I believed we needed to keep everything exactly as it was, to protect our traditions against all change. But perhaps preservation does not mean freezing culture in place. Perhaps it means allowing culture to live and breathe and grow. She paused, her skin pattern shifting through several colors as she wrestled with her thoughts. The wave makes our people happy, she continued. It helps them connect, and they have made it something uniquely ours. I do not know if I can embrace it personally. I am too old, perhaps too set in my ways, but I can stop fighting against it. I can allow my people to choose for themselves. The council chamber erupted in conversation. Some members were shocked. Others were relieved. But everyone understood that something significant had just happened. The highest authority in Velthari society had acknowledged that change was acceptable. Minho felt hope rising in his chest. Maybe, just maybe, his people could find a way to honor their past while embracing their future. Outside, in the plaza of the orbital station, Seojun and the other young Velthari were still waving at passing ships. They did not know yet that the council's position was softening. They just knew that waving felt right, and they would keep doing it no matter what anyone said. Terry watched from her station, her hand raised in a wave as another ship passed by. She thought about that first moment when she saw the human Doyen wave at her. That simple gesture had started all of this, and whatever happened next, she would always be grateful for it. The wave had given her something precious, the freedom to connect with others in a way that felt natural and true, and she would never give that up. Nearly a year had passed since Doyen first waved at the orbital station. Now the human ship HSS Wanderer was returning to Velthar Prime, and Doyen stood at the viewport feeling nervous. The last visit had not gone well. He worried that the Velthari still saw humans as disrespectful aliens who did not understand proper behavior. Beside him, Hieri was checking her equipment again. The new captain, Sunmi, stood nearby watching the planet grow larger on their screens. She had studied everything available about Velthari culture and knew this visit was important. "Remember," Sunmi said quietly to her crew, "we need to be respectful, follow their protocols exactly. No casual gestures this time." Doyen nodded, though part of him felt sad about it. The wave was so natural to him. Not waving felt like not breathing, but he understood the need for caution. As they approached the orbital station, Doyen moved to the viewport. He could see the docking bays, the workstations, the familiar spiral structure of Velthari architecture. And then he saw something that made him freeze. A Velthari worker at one of the viewports was waving at them. Then another worker waved. And another. From different viewports from nearby ships from the docking bays, Velthari were raising their hands and waving at the human vessel. Dozens of them. Their webbed fingers spread wide, their movements accompanied by glowing patterns of blue and green on their skin. Doyen stared in complete shock. Hieri started laughing, a sound of pure delight. Sunmi watched with wide eyes, unable to believe what she was seeing. "They're waving," Doyen whispered. "They're all waving." Without thinking, he raised his hand and waved back. Then Hieri waved. Then Sunmi. Then the entire human crew was at the viewports, waving at the Velthari with enormous smiles on their faces. The simple gesture they had taken for granted had spread through an entire alien civilization. It was impossible, and yet it was happening right before their eyes. When the shuttle docked, Terry was waiting for them. She was older now, with new markings of rank on her skin. The moment she saw Doyen, she smiled and waved. Doyen waved back enthusiastically, and they both laughed. "Welcome back," Terry said through her translator. "We've been looking forward to your return." "I can't believe it," Doyen said, still somewhat stunned. The wave. Everyone was waving. Terry's skin patterns glowed with warm colors. "Yes, you started something big. Come, the council is waiting to meet with you." The council chambers were different from the last time Doyen had seen them. The atmosphere was less formal, less cold. When the human delegation entered, several council members nodded in greeting. One even waved slightly as if testing the gesture. Minho was there, looking pleased to see them. And at the center sat High Counselor Yuna, her elegant form still carrying authority, but her skin patterns showing less rigid colors than before. "Captain Sunmi," Yuna said formally. "Welcome to Velthar Prime. Please be seated." Once everyone was settled, Yuna looked directly at the humans. "I imagine you noticed the greeting you received on your arrival." "It was wonderful," Sunmi said carefully. "Though unexpected. I'm sure it was." Yuna's skin patterns shifted to thoughtful purple. "What you may not know is that your last visit created significant upheaval in our society. Your simple gesture, the wave, has become widespread among our people. It has caused conflict between generations, debate in our highest councils, and forced us to question traditions we thought were unchangeable." Doyen felt his stomach tighten. "I'm sorry. I never meant to cause problems. It was just a greeting, something we do without thinking." "Without thinking," Yuna repeated slowly. "That is exactly what makes it powerful. You did not intend to influence our culture. You simply acted naturally, and in doing so you showed my people something they had been missing." Minho leaned forward. "We want you to understand what the wave means to us now. It is not just a copied human gesture. We have made it our own, adapted it to our communication systems, added our own meanings to it. It has become part of Velthari culture." Sunmi spoke carefully. "As humans, we recognize the responsibility that comes with cultural exchange. We never want to impose our ways on other species or cause harm to existing traditions. If our presence has disrupted your society, we sincerely apologize." Kira, sitting quietly in the corner, made a sound like gentle laughter. "Disrupted, perhaps. But disruption is not always bad. Sometimes it is necessary for growth." Yuna stood and gestured toward the viewing wall of the chamber. "Come, I want to show you something." The wall showed a view of the space around Velthar Prime. Dozens of ships moved through the orbital traffic patterns. Cargo vessels, passenger transports, research ships, military patrols. And as the humans watched, they saw ship after ship exchange waves with each other and with the station. But these were not simple human waves. Each wave was accompanied by bioluminescent patterns that glowed through the ship windows. Some waves were quick, others slow. Some were accompanied by blue patterns, others by green or yellow or combinations of colors. Each variation had meaning. "Watch," Minho said, pointing to one exchange. A cargo ship waved at a passing research vessel with green and yellow patterns. "That pilot is thanking the research ship for sharing updated navigation data. The colors and the specific motion convey gratitude and professional respect." He pointed to another exchange. "That wave, with the blue patterns and the slower motion, is a formal acknowledgement between military vessels. It maintains respect while being much faster than our old protocols." Doyen watched in amazement. The Velthari had taken his simple greeting and transformed it into something rich and complex. They had not abandoned their love of meaning and structure. They had just found a faster, more natural way to express it. "It's beautiful," Harry said softly. "You made it your own." "Yes," Una said, and for the first time her voice carried warmth. "We did. That is what I have come to understand. Cultural exchange is not about one culture replacing another. It is about taking something new and making it fit who you are. The wave is still a wave, but it is now a Velthari wave." She turned to face the humans directly. "I was afraid at first. Afraid that accepting this gesture meant losing ourselves. But I was wrong. We have not lost anything. We have gained a new way to connect, to express ourselves, to reach across distance and say, 'I see you.' That is not cultural destruction. That is growth," Sunmi smiled. "I think that's one of the most important lessons in the galaxy. We're all different, but we can learn from each other without losing who we are." As the meeting continued, the conversation shifted to other topics. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, scientific cooperation. The relationship between humans and Velthari was beginning again, this time on better footing. Later, Terry showed Doyun and Hyeri around the station. She was proud of the changes, of how the wave had become integrated into daily life without destroying the formal protocols that were still used for important occasions. "We have both now," Terry explained. "For diplomatic meetings, for legal proceedings, for ceremonies, we still use the traditional protocols. But for everyday interactions, for quick acknowledgments between ships, for expressing simple friendship, we wave. It works perfectly." As they walked past a viewport, a ship passed by outside. Its pilot saw them and waved, skin patterns glowing bright green. Terry waved back without hesitation. Doyen joined in, and the three of them stood there waving at a passing ship like it was the most natural thing in the world. Because now, for the Velthari it was that evening. Before the humans departed, Una approached Doyen privately. She studied him for a moment, her ancient eyes thoughtful. "When you waved at us a year ago," she said, "did you have any idea what would happen?" Doyen shook his head. "No, I just wanted to say hello." Una was silent for a moment. Then slowly and somewhat awkwardly, she raised her hand and waved at him. It was stiff, clearly unfamiliar, but the intention was clear. Doyen's face broke into a huge smile. He waved back and saw Una's skin patterns shift to gentle gold, the color of peaceful acceptance. "Thank you," Una said quietly, "for teaching us that it is acceptable to be simple, to be warm, to just wave." "Thank you," Doyen replied, "for showing us what our gesture could become." As the human ship departed from Velthar Prime, Doyen stood at the viewport one last time. The station was visible in the distance, and all around it ships moved through space. And everywhere he looked, Velthari were waving, at each other, at passing vessels, at the departing human ship. A simple gesture had become something bigger than he ever imagined. And somehow Doyen knew this was just the beginning. 5 years had passed since Doyen first waved at Tyre through a viewport. Now he was returning to Velthar Prime again, this time for a special anniversary celebration. The Velthari wanted to mark the moment that changed their culture forever, and they had invited the humans to join them. But as Doyen's ship approached Velthar space, he noticed something extraordinary. They were not alone. The space lanes around the Velthari homeworld were crowded with vessels from dozens of different species. Some he recognized, others were completely unfamiliar. and they were all waving. A massive cargo hauler from the four-armed Nexian species passed nearby, and through its many viewports, Doyen could see crew members waving with all four arms in a complex flowing pattern. A sleek research vessel belonging to the crystalline Zenth species approached from another angle, and its hull flashed with light in wave-like sequences. Doyen watched in wonder as species after species exchanged waves with each other. Each one had adapted the gesture to their own biology and culture, but the core meaning remained the same. I see you. I acknowledge you. Hello. How did this happen? Hieri asked, standing beside him at the viewport. The Veltari, Doyen said quietly. They spread it. Just like it spread through their culture, it spread to others. When they docked at the orbital station, Terry was waiting for them. She was older now, with silver streaks in her skin patterns that marked her as an elder. But her eyes were still bright with the same curiosity Doyen remembered. She waved, and Doyen waved back. It was such a natural greeting between them now, as easy as breathing. Welcome home, Terry said warmly. Yes, I said home. You are always welcome here, Doyen. You changed everything for us. I just waved, Doyen said with a smile. You did everything else. Terry walked with him through the station, and Doyen saw how much had changed. Young Velthari waved constantly, to friends and strangers alike. It was as natural to them as speech. They had grown up with the wave, never knowing a time when it did not exist. One young Velthari, barely more than a child, swam past an observation window and waved at the fish swimming in the water outside. The gesture was so casual, so joyful that Doyen had to laugh. That's my daughter Nari, Terry said with obvious pride. She waves at everything. Fish, ships, stars, clouds. She says the universe is full of things worth acknowledging. The celebration was held in the largest chamber of the orbital station. Representatives from 30 different species had gathered, and the room was filled with incredible diversity. Beings of every shape, size, and color mingled together, and everywhere Doyen looked, people were waving. A tentacled Kethral diplomat waved at a gaseous Ur representative, who responded with a pressure wave that rippled through the air. A massive stone-like being from the Granith species lifted what passed for its arm in a slow, grinding wave. Even the smallest creatures found ways to participate in the universal gesture. When it was time for speeches, Terry took the stage. She looked out at the assembled beings with warm affection, her skin patterns glowing with happiness colors. 5 years ago, she began, I was a simple dock worker following protocols I had followed my entire life. And then I saw something that changed everything. A human raised his hand and moved it back and forth in the air. Such a small gesture, such a simple thing. I didn't understand it at first, but I felt its meaning. It said, I see you. You matter. She paused, looking at Doyen in the crowd. That human Doyen taught me more than just a gesture. He taught me that connection doesn't have to be complicated, that sometimes the simplest expressions carry the deepest meaning, and he taught me that it's okay to express joy, to be casual, to let yourself be friendly without following a script. The room was silent, every being listening. The wave spread through my people because we needed it, Tyree continued. Our protocols had become so complex that they prevented the very connection they were meant to create. The wave gave us permission to be simple again, to express warmth without ceremony. And then something wonderful happened. The wave spread beyond our world. She gestured to the crowd. I see beings here from across the galaxy. Each of you has adapted the wave to your own form, your own culture. The Kethral use their tentacles to create flowing patterns. The Zenth reflect light in wave sequences. The Ur create pressure waves in the air. Each version is unique, but all carry the same meaning. I see you. I acknowledge you. You are not alone. A Kethral diplomat rose to speak next. Ambassador Yunji moved slowly, her tentacles flowing around her like water. The Kethral were known across the galaxy as a lonely species, isolated even among their own kind. Their biology made emotional expression difficult, and their society had struggled with connection for millennia. I must tell you a story, Yunji said. Her voice translated through the universal device. 3 years ago, a Kethral science vessel encountered a Velthari ship in deep space. Our peoples had no prior contact. No shared language, no common reference point. But as the ships passed each other, the Velthari crew waved. She paused, her tentacles trembling slightly with emotion. My people did not understand the gesture at first, but we felt its intention. Someone was reaching out across the void, across all our differences, just to say hello. For the first time in our lives, we felt truly seen by another being. We learned about the wave after that encounter, Yunji continued. We studied it. We practiced it. And slowly we began using it with our own people. It has changed us. Depression rates in Kethral society have dropped by 30% since we adopted the wave. Suicide rates have fallen even more. Because now we have a way to reach out to each other. A way to say, I see you, even when we cannot find the words. The chamber was completely silent now. Many beings, including Doyun, felt tears forming in their eyes. He had never imagined that a simple wave could save lives. When it was Doyun's turn to speak, he stood before the assembled beings and felt overwhelmed by what he saw. This incredible diversity, all connected by something he had done without thinking, something so human and simple that it had become universal. I don't know what to say, Doyun began honestly. When I waved at Terry 5 years ago, I was just being myself. Humans wave at each other all the time. It's so natural to us that we don't even think about it. But watching all of you, seeing how you've made the wave your own, I realized something important. He looked around the room. The wave isn't special because of me. It's special because of what it represents. The desire to connect, the need to acknowledge each other, the courage to reach across distance and difference to say you are not alone. Every sentient being in the galaxy feels these things. The wave just gave us a way to express them. After the speeches, the celebration continued with food and conversation and joy. Doyun found himself talking with beings from a dozen species, all sharing stories about how the wave had changed their lives. Each story was different, but the theme was always the same: connection, acknowledgement, hope. As the evening grew late, Doyun stood at a viewport overlooking the space lanes around Velthar Prime. Tyri joined him there, and they watched in comfortable cells. Military patrols waved at civilian transports. Tiny maintenance drones waved at massive colony ships. Species that had been enemies for generations now waved at each other in passing. It was not peace exactly, but it was acknowledgement. And acknowledgement was a start. Thank you, Terry said quietly, for teaching us that it's okay to be simple, to be kind, to just wave. Doyun smiled and raised his hand to wave at a passing ship. The ship waved back, and he felt that familiar warmth of connection. I think you taught yourselves, he said. I just showed you it was possible. They stood there together, human and Velthari, watching the endless stream of ships wave to each other in the darkness of space. And Doyun knew that long after he was gone, long after everyone at this celebration had passed into history, beings across the galaxy would still be waving, still reaching out to each other, still saying, I see you, in the simplest, most beautiful way possible. Young Nari, Terry's daughter, swam up to the viewport and pressed her face against the glass. She waved at every ship that passed, her small hand moving back and forth with pure joy. She had never known a universe without the wave. To her, it was as natural as starlight. Why do we wave? Nari asked her mother. Terry smiled and placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder. Because we want others to know they are seen. Because in a big dark universe, it's important to acknowledge each other. Because a simple gesture can mean everything. Nari nodded seriously, then waved at another passing ship with renewed enthusiasm. Doyun watched the young Velthari and felt his heart swell with emotion. This was his legacy. Not great discoveries or heroic deeds, but this, teaching the galaxy how to wave. Teaching the galaxy how to say hello, and somehow, that felt like the most important thing he could have ever done. Years later, when new species made contact with the galactic community, one of the first things they learned was the wave. It had become so universal that many young beings thought it was an ancient tradition shared by all spacefaring civilizations. Very few knew that it had started with one human on one ship, making one simple gesture. But the knowledge of its origin did not matter. What mattered was what the wave represented. Agala,